ladies and gentlemen. On behalf of the Director General of UNESCO, I'm pleased and honored to address you on this important occasion. I'm grateful that all of you can be here with us today. First, let me express my special thanks to our host, the government of Georgia and its president. Your warm hospitality and the dedication to promoting environmental education worldwide is unwavering. 35 years ago, UNESCO, in cooperation with the United Nations Environmental Program, organized the world's first intergovernmental conference on environmental education here in Tbilisi. The declaration that emerged from that conference set out the fundamental principles for environmental education, principles that continue to be relevant. Today, we have returned to Tbilisi. I've come to take stock of good practices in environmental education and education for sustainable development that have been instituted since 1977, and to develop recommendations for the future as we approach the end of the United Nations Decade of Education for Sustainable Development in year 2014. Dear colleagues, the stakes are high. We live in a world of 7 billion people with limited natural resources. Individuals and societies have no choice but to learn to live together and act more sustainably. The United Nations Secretary General's high-level panel on global sustainability has put it clearly. Their report, Resilient People, Resilient Planet, states, we need to change dramatically, beginning with how we think about our relationship to each other, to future generations, and to the ecosystems that support us. We cannot make these changes without education. I'm sure you will agree with me that education is the cornerstone to a more sustainable future. Allow me to briefly outline UNESCO's vision of education for sustainable development. If we want our economies and the societies to become green, we must empower all individuals and societies with the knowledge, skills, and the values to shape them. Building green economies and the societies require new curricula, job qualifications, and the learning objectives we set will need to be adjusted. Education must be relevant for today's world. It must help us find solutions to our sustainability challenges. Education for sustainable development is education for the future. It means integrating key sustainable development issues into education, such as climate change. Education for sustainable development also means introducing participatory teaching and learning methods which have the power to motivate and empower learners to change their behavior and make action for sustainable development. Dear colleagues, since the beginning of the United Nations Decade of Education for Sustainable Development, ESD has gained ground in countries across the world. It is increasingly present in national and international education policies, and the ESD teaching practices are steadily advancing. UNESCO is often approached by stakeholders for guidance and agenda setting. The number of success stories from around the world is growing fast. China has designated a large number of experimental schools for ESD. Sweden has made it mandatory the teaching and the learning of sustainable development at the various levels of education system. Japan has integrated ESD into national curriculum guidelines. Chile is promoting ESD through the national system of certified schools, with more than 10,000 schools certified. As a lead agency for the UN decade, UNESCO is currently focusing on 3 key areas in this ESD work: climate change and education, disaster risk reduction, and biodiversity education. We're running pilot country programs to assist the policymakers and teacher educators to take action on climate change. Via a new climate change clean-house database, we provide easy and free of charge access to hundreds of climate change education resources and materials. UNESCO is also promoting dialogue and learning through its global network of biosphere reserves. 580 reserves in 114 countries, where we are bringing key actors together to agree on actions for sustainability in ways that are meaningful to them. The United Nations Decade of Education for Sustainable Development is the work of a partnership within the UN system, beginning together 22 agencies. UNEP's initiative for mainstreaming environment and sustainability in African universities involves 65 universities from 32 African countries. The United Nations University has created a network of 100 regional centers for expertise. The United Nations Children's Fund has integrated education for sustainable development as part of all its work to promote quality education. Each of these examples demonstrates the power of ESD. Support for ESD is increasing. 68 member states supported ESD in their statements at the 36th General Conference of UNESCO in the year 2011. The report of the UN Secretary General's high-level panel on global sustainability emphasizes the importance of ESD. The most recent evidence of ESD gaining momentum is the outcome document of the Rio+20 conference called The Future We Want. It contains significant passages on ESD, with member states committing to promote education for sustainable development and to integrate sustainable development more actively into education beyond the United Nations Decade of Education for Sustainable Development. Ladies and gentlemen, the outcome of Rio+20 is clear. We need to continue ESD beyond 2014. The document also emphasizes the link between quality education and ESD, stating that the capacity of our education systems to prepare people to pursue sustainable development must be improved. And it encourages education institutions to apply a whole institution approach to ESD. This means that sustainable development is taught as an integrated component across all disciplines, and that the campuses are managed sustainability and engaged with the community. Building on our experience as lead agency for the UN decade, UNESCO's responsibility for ESD has been confirmed in the follow-up to the Rio+20 outcome document. UNESCO was named responsible agency among UN partners for the main areas of education, which includes following up on member states' commitment to strengthening ESD beyond the end of the decade. With the target date of 2015 for the Millennium Development Goals and the Education for All goals fast approaching. The global education and development agendas will be fundamentally renegotiated in the coming years. ESD work towards 2014 consequently needs to be accelerated. UNESCO will launch stakeholders consultations on the post-2014 ESD framework to facilitate the development of a strategy for ESD activities after 2014. We are planning a high-impact end-of-decades report that will provide evidence of ESD successes and guide the way forward. 5 years after the Bonn World Conference on Education for Sustainable Development, UNESCO and the government of Japan will organize the UNESCO World Conference on Education for Sustainable Development, which will mark the end of the decade in November 2014 in Nagoya, Japan, with a broad range of stakeholders. First, the conference will celebrate the numerous achievements of the decade and draw conclusions from lessons learned to identify key areas for future action. Second, we need to demonstrate that the ESD is an integral part of quality education in the 21st century. ESD contents are the practitioner teaching and learning method after crucial ways to make education relevant today. And the third, the conference will help show ESD addresses and accelerates the action for sustainable development. We must consider how ESD can help move sustainable development policy and the action forward. Dear colleagues, ladies and gentlemen, today we have the chance to shape an education that is relevant to the challenges of tomorrow. Let us celebrate what environmental education has brought to the ESD agenda, and as we develop the next set of global education and development goals, ensure that we take advantage of the potential of education for sustainable development. Let me say once again, education for sustainable development must continue after the year 2014. I wish you have a good conference. We're waiting for the recommendations and the declaration came from this conference, and then this will guide our future strategy to further promote education for sustainable development. Thank you for your attention.